introduction emailed over to me from you or your office right now. But it is my pleasure to introduce Nat Nehring, and he is the Snohomish County Councilman and lives right here in Arlington. And so let's give a warm welcome to Nat Nehring.
Welcome.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate that. And just for a time check, I can go as short or as long as you'd all like. So how long would you like me to present for? Make sure to leave time for questions and stuff as well.
September.
September. All right.
We just need to get wrapped up by 1 o'clock, Nate.
Okay. Sounds great. That should be perfect then. Well, thank you all for having me. I really appreciate it. Like I mentioned, this is one of my favorite things to do. Favorite parts of the job is to get out and speak with groups like this one about Snohomish County and hear from you about what's most important to you and hopefully answer some questions if there are any. So just a brief background about me. I was born and raised in Marysville, went to Western Washington University and studied education, and I taught briefly in the Marysville School District before getting this position on the Snohomish County Council. And I am one of 5 council members, and so I represent North Snohomish County, which includes the cities of Arlington, Marysville, Granite Falls, Stanwood, and Darrington, and then unincorporated North County. And so I've been doing that since January of 2017 and really enjoy it. But with my wife and I moved into Arlington about 3 years ago, and that's where we're raising our family. We've got a daughter who's almost 2, and then we've got a son who will turn 6 months tomorrow. And so having a lot of fun during COVID, getting to spend a little bit more time at home with family. So that's been a blessing. But we really love the community here in Arlington and are just so blessed to live here, and really looking forward to raising our family here. So I'll jump right into the presentation. And if anybody has questions, you can interrupt or we can wait till the end, whatever folks prefer. But to start out with kind of an update on Snohomish County, is going to talk a little bit about our budget. You know, as a county council member, we have 2 main jobs. The first is passing or adjusting or creating new laws for the county or ordinances. And the second is the passage of our annual budget. And so we've got an annual budget in Snohomish County of just over $1 billion. And so we pass that every year, usually right before Thanksgiving. So how that process works is the county executive will work on developing a budget proposal. He's doing that right now, and in just about 3 or 4 weeks, he'll deliver that budget proposal up to the county council, and then we will spend the next month and a half, 2 months, deliberating on that and making potential adjustments before ultimately adopting a budget, like I mentioned, just right before Thanksgiving for the following year. So in our budget, we fund services both for incorporated city residents and for unincorporated county residents. And so those are things like the sheriff's office, roads, county parks, elections, the court system for both district and superior court, and several other services. And so we've had a real focus on the county council in recent years on efficiency and on trying to stretch your tax dollars as much as possible so that we can get you the most bang for your buck. And so we've taken a look at a lot of the tax increases that we've seen over the recent years, whether those are, you know, at the state level or at the local level through different special purpose districts, and see that the tax burden has been increasing on residents, on taxpayers over the years. And so we've tried really hard to hold the line on that at Snohomish County. And in the last 3 budgets, we have adopted budgets with no increase to the general property tax levy for the county portion of it. That doesn't mean that that other taxes haven't increased by other jurisdictions, but we tried to make that a priority and really try to work on efficiency to, like I said, stretch your tax dollars as much as we can. Also, in the process of those budgets, we've tried to build up our revenue stabilization fund, which is basically a rainy day fund. And so when I joined the county council in 2017, we had about $25,000 in our rainy day fund, which of course doesn't get you very far. And so over the last 3 budgets, we've been able to add into that to where we now have about $4.5 million in that revenue stabilization fund, which is a significant improvement from where we were previously. And it timed out really well because now that we built that up and then we were hit with, of course, this unforeseen pandemic with COVID, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more, but that's caused some significant economic problems, of course, for businesses and for families throughout our county and state and country. And it's also caused a significant revenue shortfall for local governments. And so Snohomish County is facing about a $28 million revenue shortfall. And so that $4.5 million that we had in the rainy day fund, of course, doesn't bridge the gap, but it certainly helps. And we've taken other steps to address that deficit. We've implemented a hiring freeze countywide. County employees have taken furloughs for 5 days, and we've delayed or canceled some large capital projects and studies and other things. And so we're working to tackle that deficit, and in the budget, which we'll be considering in the next couple of months here, we will do that. It'd be great if we could do that without laying off staff. Of course, that's going to depend on, how the deficit continues to grow with how sales tax numbers come in over the next couple of months. And so that'll be a very difficult budget, but, I think it's important that we make those difficult decisions. And I know businesses, many of you and families throughout Snohomish County are having to make those difficult decisions in your own circumstances too. And so we'll look forward to doing that, and certainly would love to hear input. If any of you have ideas or thoughts on what should be prioritized, you can always call or email, and would love to hear about that. We have also implemented an online budget tool. And so this is something that I've been working with staff on. If you look at some websites like Pierce County or different cities, the city of Arlington may have one, I'm not sure, but they have an online budget tool. So any citizen can log onto the website and kind of see what the budget looks like and how, if you were to move funding from here to here, here's how it would affect the overall budget. Well, we haven't had that on our Snohomish County website. And so we've just recently been working with staff to develop that. And that should be getting posted online just in the next couple of weeks here. And so I think that'll be a cool way for citizens to be able to go on and see the same thing that we see as council members, and be able to play around with that and see what our different options are. A little more about COVID-19. So obviously that's been the big thing this year that all, local and state governments have been dealing with. And so our initial response in, late February, early March, when this hit, was we set up several different groups through the county, coordinating with our cities. The city of Arlington's been a great partner, and other entities as well. And so we've got regular meetings or calls scheduled with the county executive, who's been setting them up, mayors, emergency responders, and others, to make sure that we're coordinated in our response to this. And then as we shifted, we had the immediate crisis, and then we started to turn, as county government, to the economic fallout, which is another piece of this. Obviously there's significant damage to public health and people who have been affected by the virus. And then we've also got the issue of our economy and people's jobs and their livelihoods. And so as a county, we started an economic and workforce recovery task force just a few months ago. And so I've been chairing North County Economic and Workforce Recovery Task Force, and I think we've got a couple people in this group who are a part of that. I know John Mino is, and Mayor Tolbert, and some others. And I think that the city of Arlington has one as well, which is great. And so we're trying to do our best to work with businesses to see how we can best support them during this very difficult time. Obviously, there are a lot of things that are coming down from the state level, which we can't always change at the local level, but we want to do everything we can to support our businesses and our families who are struggling economically through this time. And so if anybody has questions or wants to get involved with that, you can always get in touch with me, and would love to have you as a part of that group. We also received some CARES Act funding from the federal government. So this was a piece of legislation that went through Congress and was signed into law by the president. And Snohomish County received funding through this, and we appropriated about $37 million in CARES Act funds for economic stabilization in Snohomish County. So we had several rounds of small business grants. Some of you may have applied for that, and other things that went to help as well, such as our aerospace industry and other items. And so that was something we were able to do. Obviously, I think we received over 1,000 grant applications in the first 24 hours. And so 37 million sounds like a big number, but the amount of requests that we had through the grant applications was significantly higher. And so we weren't able to help each business, which is unfortunate, but trying to do what we can to support our businesses. And then another step that's happened somewhat recently was the move into phase 2. And so I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with kind of the criteria that have been set up by the state level for moving through this phase reopening process, but we started out in phase 1, and the goalposts were moving a little bit on how counties could move into phase 2 and get to at least some sort of safe reopening where businesses could open with safety and health restrictions. And so we're having a difficult time working with the state on that. And we were able to put together a bipartisan proposal, myself and the health board chair, Stephanie Wright, and the county executive, Dave Summers. put that forward and got a unanimous vote on the Snohomish County Board of Health and sent that to the governor's office, and they ended up approving that. So we did move into phase 2, which was great. And then we were just on the brink of moving into phase 3 when the numbers started to increase for case counts. And so I've got some of the current data on the case counts I thought I'd just share. We are in a better spot now than we were previously. Our current case count over a 2-week period, and this is for every 100,000 residents, is about 60 cases. That's down from about 100 cases just about a month ago. However, the target that's been set up by the state to move from phase 2 to phase 3 is to be 25 cases or lower. That's one of the criteria. And so obviously we're not very close to being there, but we are in a much better position than we were with case counts decreasing. Hospitalizations and deaths are also decreasing. Those never really went back up with the second wave that we saw at case counts. We did not see a significant increase in hospitalizations or deaths, and there's different theories as to why that might be. One of the things that was reported at a recent Board of Health meeting was that these new cases that we're seeing are in large part being driven by younger individuals, as opposed to the former circumstance where it was kind of across the board and we were seeing people of all ages getting the new cases. And so there's been some targeted efforts to try to do outreach to people in younger generations to take care of health and safety precautions. But those are the stats that the health district has put out recently. And so again, we're trending in the right direction, but obviously it's going to be very difficult to meet that criteria that's been set up by the state to get under 25 cases per 100,000 residents every 2 weeks. That's a pretty high bar. And so anyway, we'll continue to work with the state and do what we can to get there. There have been some recent reports from the state. I know the governor had come out and given some announcements about agritourism. So when we're approaching the fall, we've got a lot of farmers who set up, corn mazes and pumpkin patches and those sorts of things. And I believe initially those were going to not be allowed, but our agriculture community and others were able to work with the governor's office. And I think he's come back and adjusted those so that outdoor activities now will be permitted. So we continue to work with the state on these things. It's very frustrating in local government because we've got very little control over the restrictions that are in place. In large part, those are all being driven by the state. There are issues that come up. So for example, we had early on an issue where public construction was allowed to go on, but private construction was not, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. And so we were able, as county leaders and city leaders, mayors, send a letter to the governor's office on that. And since then, that has been adjusted. Another example is, when we were in phase 1, large box stores were allowed to be open. So, your Walmarts and your grocery stores, but then the mom and pop shops and the small businesses were not. And so part of the movement into phase 2 is the ability for those smaller businesses to open up in a safe way, utilizing PPE and other health and safety precautions. And so I'm glad that we've been able to get there, and obviously we'll look forward to continuing to see those cases decrease so that we can move along into phase 3 and hopefully get our economy safely reopened. That's a bit about COVID-19. Happy to answer any questions on that at the end. But the next thing I had to touch on was transportation. And so in 2015, Washington State passed a Connecting Washington Transportation Package, which is a really significant package that funded several projects throughout the state. And here in North Snohomish County, we were able to receive about $160 million worth of projects over the next several years, which is a really great investment for our area. And that's due in large part to people like Mayor Tolbert at the city and other city leaders and county leaders at the time who fought and advocated for this. And so some examples of those projects include interchange improvements at 172nd Street. I believe we've got it funded from I-5 up until 67th Avenue on 172nd Street. Of course, now the issue is how do we get it funded from 67th up to Highway 9, where we're seeing a lot of growth and congestion. And so we're working on that. I know the city's working very hard, and the county wants to be a partner as much as we can be on that. Other significant investments include the SR 529 interchange, which was in the paper just this morning in the Everett Herald. But that's about a $45 million project that's already underway. And then another brand new interchange will go in at 156th Street. I think that's scheduled for 2025, but that's a $42 million project. And if you're driving northbound on I-5 right now from Everett or Marysville toward Arlington, you'll see the overpass at 156th Street, but there's no interchange. And so what this project will do is create a full interchange at that location, which will allow access to the Cascade Industrial Center, which is that job center in Arlington and Marysville. And so that's a really important project, and we're looking forward to having that completed. Again, it's fully funded by the state, but isn't slated to be completed until 2025. As far as local projects go, community transit has an exciting project coming to North Snohomish County, which is called Bus Rapid Transit. And so they'll be creating a bus rapid transit route from State Street in Marysville down through Smoky Point in Arlington. And so it'll be an opportunity for folks to make use of those community transit routes. We don't have a whole lot of service in North Snohomish County, and so it's a good thing to see them branching out into North County, which I really appreciate. Next on the list, I've got a regional collaboration, which we've been working on. And so Snohomish County is a member of the Puget Sound Regional Council. Some of you may know that, but we do a lot of work with our Puget Sound partners, which includes Pierce, King, and Kitsap counties. The difficult thing there is King County is the big fish, right, in terms of population, and so it's very difficult for Snohomish County to have our voices heard if there's areas of disagreement. And so it's really important to have those relationships with the counties to the south, but we've also been looking to how can we improve our regional collaboration with counties to the north. So Whatcom County, Island County, Skagit County, San Juan County, because these are counties where we have a lot of shared interests on things like behavioral health and transportation and housing and other sorts of things. And so we've been working with those counties. We've been working with Commissioner Ken Dahlstedt from Skagit County on establishing a group called SWIS. And so it's just an acronym for the 5 counties: Snohomish, Whatcom Island, Skagit, and San Juan. And the idea is how can we come together to jointly work on these things, like I mentioned, whether it's rural broadband or transportation or whatnot, and do legislative advocacy at the state level. Because when we go down at Snohomish County, you know, we've got seven legislative districts with 21 legislators that represent us down in Olympia. And it's great to be able to bring our issues to them and hopefully have them advocate on our behalf. But when you bring 5 counties together and add in all those legislators who represent those areas, it just makes it all that more effective and strong when we're down in Olympia advocating for whether it's bringing funding back to our area or changing policy to support different initiatives that are going on in our region. And so that's been a great effort. We had our first meeting just last week, and it went really well. I have participation from each of the 5 counties, and so I'm really looking forward to see where that goes here in the future. Next is homelessness and opioid abuse. So this is one which has been a major issue, and of course now that we've been in the pandemic, COVID's been really at the center of everything, both the public health side of it and the economic side of it. But up until COVID, I'd say the #1 issue I heard about, maybe aside from taxes, was homelessness and opioids and a lot of the related issues that we were seeing with behavioral health and other sorts of things. And so this is something that I've spent quite a bit of work on, and there's been some great partnerships formed that I'll talk about real briefly here. But I'm really appreciative of all these entities which Snohomish County has been able to partner with, and all the people who are really working hard to try to make an impact here on this very difficult issue. Obviously, this is something that we see, but it's something that's affecting our entire state and really our entire country. And so it's not something that's unique to Snohomish County, but we do want to do everything we can to hopefully address it and provide some effective solutions to it. And so one I'd really like to highlight, and I know many of you are probably familiar with this, is the Law Enforcement Embedded Social Worker Program. This is something which started as a partnership with the City of Arlington, Mayor Tolbert and Chief Ventura, as well as the City of Marysville and Snohomish County, both the Sheriff's Office and our Human Services Department. And what it does is it partners up law enforcement with social workers who can go out into homeless encampments or areas where folks with addiction or other issues are struggling with, and they will meet those folks where they're at and work to get them connected to the services they need, whether that's housing, treatment, detox, job training further down the line. They have all these connections where they can get folks to the services that they need in order to get them back onto a safe and healthy and sustainable lifestyle, which I think in the end is really beneficial for all involved. It's beneficial for the community, it's cheaper for the taxpayer than the alternative of jail, and obviously it's better for the individual who's struggling with addiction or homelessness or whatever it is that they are struggling with. And so that program has been hugely successful. I've been very impressed by it, and that's in large part due to the leadership that we've seen from Chief Ventura in Arlington, from the Marysville Police, from Mayor Tolbert and all the others who have been involved. I have some stats here that show since the program has been implemented, this is for both Marysville and Arlington, but housing has been secured for over 220 individuals, and treatment has been secured for over 190 individuals. And so that just blows away kind of what our expectations were when we had initially looked at this. And so great work is being done by those law enforcement officers and social workers who are out doing this each and every day. And again, a big kudos to the cities of Arlington and Marysville for the great leadership they've shown. Part of the reason I think this is still effective in North Snohomish County as opposed to other areas like maybe Seattle or other jurisdictions which have somewhat similar programs is I think our cities, Arlington and Marysville and the county, take more of a carrot and a stick approach. And so the priority is obviously we want to get people into housing and detox and treatment and get people back onto a sustainable lifestyle. But I think what you'll see in Seattle is they're happy to throw money at these things. Right now, I think they're spending over $100,000 per individual who's homeless and haven't seen great results. I think the problem's continually getting worse. And that's because there really is no stick. If somebody's committing crimes or shooting up heroin, they're thinking about bringing heroin injection sites into the city. They don't really do a whole lot about that. They're more focused on putting the money into it. But there's no real motivation or initiative to try to get people to take on those services. Whereas here in North Snohomish County, the cities of Arlington and Marysville have been great partners and trying to provide that motivation. And so they'll go out with these individuals and they'll say, you've got the option of treatment, housing, potential job training, all at the expense of the taxpayer. These are resources which we've made available. But if you don't do that and you choose to refuse those services and you can continue to commit property crimes or steal from cars or shoot up heroin, then you're going to go to jail and we're going to deal with it that way. So it's created a real clear dichotomy, which, if you talk to the individuals who have been through the program, as I have, and heard some of these really inspiring stories, that's what made the difference. That's the difference between what's happening here versus what's happening in Seattle and other areas. And I think just one story I'll share real briefly was someone who maybe they had been in Seattle and dealt with that. And they were approached by one of our social workers and police officers, and they were kind of given this choice of treatment versus jail. And they said, yeah, whatever, I don't want the treatment. Didn't really believe them that they were going to follow through with it. And so that person was arrested, booked into jail. And then their ex-spouse had called, I think, the police department and said, look, he realizes you're serious now. He really does want to take on the treatment. Can you give him a second chance? And of course they did that. So the social workers went and met with him in the jail. They got him signed up for the treatment program. And he's now, as I understand, he's now sober. He's reunited with his family, paying for his kids' sports games and things like that. And so that's really cool to hear stories like that, where this program has really had a positive impact on people's lives. And I think a positive impact on the community as a whole as well. And so again, really proud of that, really proud of the work that's been done by Arlington Police and Marysville Police and both cities and county staff who have been putting a lot of effort into that. Going hand in hand with that, the county has opened up in recent years both the Diversion Center, which is right across the county campus, as well as the Carnegie Resource Center. And so the Diversion Center is really cool because before, what would happen is you'd have somebody who was homeless and struggling with addiction, and they'd say, I'm ready to get into treatment. Well, anybody who's heard about, how it is to struggle with these issues knows that when somebody makes the decision that they want to get treatment, you've got to get them in there right away. If you have to wait, a week, 2 weeks to get them into a program, they've likely changed their mind by then. So it's really important that you get early on, get them connected with services. And so the Diversion Center does just that. It's something that's staffed 24/7, where our social worker teams can bring somebody in, get them temporary shelter, get them signed up with services, get them detoxed, and get them connected with whatever it is that they need. And so that's been a real blessing for our county. We had state help in getting that started. And then the Carnegie Resource Center as well is a way for us to get folks connected with services. And so really it's an all-around effort where we're prioritizing getting people back on their feet, but we're also willing to say, if people are going to refuse services and take advantage of the community and commit crimes and those sorts of things, we're not going to deal with that either. We're going to take a really hard stance on that. And I think that's been really successful so far. Not to say there's not work to be done. There certainly still is a lot more to do, but I am proud of the progress that's been made so far. Another thing which has been great is a workforce grant for employment. This is a federal grant which was received. I can't remember the dollar amount off the top of my head, but it allows for individuals who have gone through treatment and are sober to go into, I think, 90 days worth of employment that'll be paid for through this grant. And then at the end of those 90 days, the employer can either decide to bring them on in a part-time or full-time capacity, or if not, they'll get moved into another employment opportunity. But it's great because it allows for us to help get those folks processed to where they, they're sober and they can now get into a job and a really more of a healthy lifestyle and get to be self-sufficient. So that's been a great opportunity as well for our residents. A step we had taken a couple years back is a ban on heroin injection sites. I mentioned that the city of Seattle is looking at this. I had the opportunity to go down to Vancouver, BC, and Canada, where they have a site called Insight, and was really just astonished at what I saw. I went with Scott Bader, who's an Everett City Council member, and we parked about a mile away from the site. And just from the walk from the car to the site, which, like I said, is about a mile, saw hundreds of people out in the streets in front of businesses with needles in their arms. These are places where families would have had to walk to access the businesses. And it was just really sad to see the state that these people were living in and how I think the community had really just given up hope on these people and subjected them to this. And so I've got a real firm belief that that's not the answer, that this route that, we just set up the heroin injection sites and let these people shoot up heroin for the rest of their lives until they, eventually overdose and die. I don't think there's anything compassionate about that. I think it's important that we that we motivate these people to make the choice to get help and to get better for their own good and for the good of the community. And so Snohomish County passed a land use ban on heroin injection sites a couple of years back that I had proposed. And so those are banned in Snohomish County, even though they are being considered in other areas of our state. So as I mentioned, this is a really complex issue that's facing communities everywhere. And we're certainly not immune from that. And there's a lot of work to be done here in Snohomish County, but I am really, really proud of the progress we've made. And I think we're really blessed to have great partnerships throughout our region. I'll touch real quickly, and then I'll open it up for questions on economic development. A couple of great things we've got going in Snohomish County are the commercial air service at Payne Field. I'm not sure if anyone's had a chance to fly out of there. Of course, that's been shut down or reduced service recently due to COVID, but it's a really beautiful airport, and they've done a great job. We've got over $40 million of private investment that's been brought in there, won several national awards, and so we'd really encourage you, if you haven't already, to try out Payne Field. It's just really great for our region, both for passenger service and for economic development. Of course, we've got our Cascade Industrial Center, which the city of Arlington's been doing a great job on, along with the city of Marysville and the county and the port and Economic Alliance and others. And so that's over 4,000 acres of manufacturing industrial land, potential for over 25,000 family wage jobs. And so I know I'm very excited about that. One of the things I hear from residents who live up here is, it's great. Housing's expensive, but it's more affordable than, say, Seattle or South Snohomish County. So wouldn't call it affordable, but better than what we see in other areas of the region. We've got great parks and natural beauty in our area, but what we're really missing is family wage jobs. A lot of people have to commute down to Seattle or other areas to work, and so having those family wage jobs located right here in North Snohomish County will be a great opportunity for our residents to live, work, and play right here. And going hand in hand with that is the Regional Apprenticeship Pathways Program. This is something we've been working on with school districts. I know Arlington School District is a great participant, and the city of Arlington as well. Labor groups, businesses, and elected officials have all been working on pulling this together. And what it is a program which is in the high school, open to all high school students, and it allows for students to get hands-on training in the skilled trades, which our schools have really been going away from, which is unfortunate. And so we tried to bring that back. And it's a great opportunity where students who go through the program can graduate with their high school diploma, a college credential from Everett Community College, and preferred or direct entry into a state certified apprenticeship program of their choice. And so a really great opportunity for our youth to get into the trades, into what are high paying jobs with good benefits. And obviously a growing industry. We're seeing construction booming in the Puget Sound. And so a really good opportunity. The state put $1.5 million into it last session. And so we've got that program running, and quite a few students from Arlington School District actually had a chance to talked with one, Bryce Peterson, and he's just really enjoying the program and got a lot out of it. And I think he's going on to an internship this year, or maybe it was this summer. I can't quite remember, but really inspiring to see the work that those students are doing and them having the ability to go on to a hands-on career after high school. So those were some of the things I wanted to touch on. No, I think I've taken up enough time speaking at everybody, so I'll go ahead and open it up for questions. Happy to answer any questions about what I've touched on, or if there's something else you'd like to chat about, would love to do that as well. But again, really appreciate you having me here and the opportunity to give an update on Snohomish County. So thank you.
Well, I got one. Affordable housing. We definitely need more affordable housing in Snohomish County, because I think that would definitely help out families and the homeless population, because there are people that are in the homeless working but can't afford housing because it's too expensive in Snohomish County.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a really important issue, and what we're seeing in Snohomish County is some of the fastest growth of anywhere in the state. I think we're projected to have over 1 million people in the next decade or so total. You know, we've got a little over 800,000 now. So there's a lot of growth happening, a lot of people who are coming to this area, and it's very difficult to keep up with that. And so we're trying our best to, within what we can do, increase the housing supply is a really important part. Obviously, if you've got the same number of houses and a lot more people looking to purchase homes, and it drives the cost of housing up. And so if we can increase the supply of housing, that allows for prices to be driven down a little bit. But we're also restricted by the state and the Growth Management Act by different things that we can do. And so we're going through our comprehensive plan process right now at the county. I know the city is as well, where we're dealing with land use and population growth and all those sorts of things. And I think, to your point, affordable housing should be at the very top of that priority list for how can we pass a comprehensive plan that prioritizes that and makes sure that we're not driving people away, and that we have communities where our teachers and our firefighters and others are able to afford to live in.
Nate, I have a question. Since COVID has caused so many people to either have to work from home or school their kids from home, is the county doing anything to improve rural internet access? There's a lot of people who have either none or poor internet access, and it's a different world, and I think they need help.
It's a really great question. This is something that was an issue before COVID, rural broadband access, but now COVID's made it that much more of an issue, because, as you say, people are working from home and learning from home. So we've been working on this with our state and federal partners, and it's been pretty frustrating, because at the federal level they have grants available to improve broadband. But if you look at the FCC's map, and we've talked about this with our federal representatives, if you look at Washington State or Snohomish County, it shows 100% coverage, which obviously is not true, right? So the FCC has very inaccurate maps, and we've been working with our senators and congressional legislation to see how we can change that. The National Association of Counties has developed an app, I think it's called Test It, where you can, if you download the app and you hit something, then it'll add that statistic to their database, and it'll hopefully update the info to give a more accurate perspective of where the gaps are in access throughout our area. So we're ineligible for those federal grants because it shows that we're 100% covered. We have been working with the state. They've been making some investments in broadband. And we have had some new service providers come in. So Ziply Fiber has come in. Wave is looking at some potential expansions and meeting with them. So ultimately, it's either going to take, a service provider deciding that it's economical for them to expand into an area, or it's going to take grant dollars from, the state or federal level, which we can put into infrastructure. And so we're working both of those routes. The county, and I'll be in this meeting next month, has a meeting with Ziply Fiber, who's new to the area. And then we are actively pursuing those grant applications at the state level with others like the PUD. And I know the city's doing a lot of work on this as well. And so I think it's a very difficult issue. It's one that's really important now and been highlighted because of COVID. And so certainly want to work to do everything we can to try to improve access.
Well, talking to some guys that work for Ziply Fiber out here in Oso, which our internet's kind of spotty at times. They say one of the problems right now is pulling fiber and pulling on our poles. They got to get permissions from Snohomish County PUD, number one, and permits. And so, if you're waiting on permits for all this stuff, that's slowing it down. Is there a way to get the permit process speeded up?
Yes, that's a really great question. Actually, in a meeting with Wave we had, that exact point came up, where they've got to apply for permits from the county, if that's where it is, from the PUD, other entities. And I think if they're going, if they're crossing an I-5, they've got to also go through the state. And so, yeah, the county has been working internally to see how we can speed up that process internally, because that is something that we can do, on our own to try to help this issue. And so we have done that. And our meeting with Ziply isn't until next month, so we'll be sure to mention that. But I know Wave was very appreciative of that when we met with them.
So Nate, you mentioned the Growth Management Act, and if I understand it correctly, they estimate how many people will be coming to Snohomish County, and then the cities kind of determine who's going to take how many of those sorts of folks. And so when it comes to people in our community complaining about all the people moving in, some of the response sometimes is, well, we don't have any choice. We've got to we have to do fill in, that sort of thing. Can you kind of explain maybe the process so people understand it?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So the state has the Growth Management Act, which is a piece of legislation passed in the 90s, and it really guides our state's land use policy. So every 8 years now, the county and cities have to pass what's called a comprehensive plan. And so our next one was supposed to be 2023 because of COVID. I think it's been delayed to 2024. And so we're already working now on that process, looking ahead to the next comprehensive plan. But in that comp plan, we have population growth estimates, which come down. They come through the Puget Sound Regional Council to the county. And so the county will get a number or a target for how many people we need to accommodate. And then the county and cities will work together to figure out, how many can X city take versus Y city. And so the way that it looks like the direction it looks like it's heading at this point is cities which are along a mass transit corridor. So like Everett or Linwood, who has ST3 coming to their area, will take an increased number of growth to what an average would be. Whereas more rural areas like your Darrington or your Gold Bar, or your Granite Falls, which are away from mass transit, would take a lower proportion. And then you've got your larger cities like Marysville or Arlington, which are, larger areas, not necessarily rural, but they also don't have sound transit coming in, will be kind of in that middle area. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But basically the way it works is we're given a target by the Puget Sound Regional Council. The county and cities are responsible for figuring out how that gets allocated. But we do need to meet it in order to get our comprehensive plan certified by the state. And so we don't have a choice in meeting that population target.
Hey, Nate, I have a question for you. So, and first of all, hey, thanks for joining us today. Just wanted to ask you, you'd mentioned something that I've been following as well, is that the hospitalizations and death rate in Snohomish County hasn't gone up since the increase of case of numbers has gone up. And then in fact, it's dropped a little bit. And I think the last report I looked at, Snohomish County Health Department, we're at one of the lowest points for hospitalizations right now. I know I heard the governor speak about the phase program that, the 50 per 100,000, he's like that's one of the metrics, but they're looking at the whole picture. Has there been any talk with your colleagues there that, hey, maybe we could reassess this, because the main reason that we're looking at, the increase in case rates, because hospitalizations and then deaths follow that. But if those are actually less than they were when we went from phase 1 to phase 2, has there been any talk about reassessing the way that they're looking at the total case count per 100,000 as being the end all be all, is what it seems like?
Yeah, really good question. So the way that it's set up right now by the governor is that there are 5 separate criteria. So like case counts is 1, hospitalizations and deaths. And so there's all these criteria, but you need to meet all 5 in order to move on. And so that's the issue. we can meet some of them, and I think are meeting some of them right now, but until we have a case count that's under 25 per 100,000 for every 2 weeks, which is, like I mentioned earlier, a very high bar, then it's going to be difficult to move forward. And it's frustrating because, we had some communication with the state early on that, can we adjust these criteria? How can we look at this? And got very little response from the state. They were not very interested in working with local governments and others. And so there hasn't been a whole lot of collaboration between the state and local governments, which has been disappointing. So really, I think at this point, we, until the governor either adjusts the criteria or until all counties are able to meet that criteria, we're pretty well locked in phase 2.
Yeah, because my wife's a nurse and she says it's going to be impossible to get 25 per 100,000. I mean, that's a number. I don't know how they ever come up with that number, but that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, and it is an arbitrary number, and even our health officer here in Snohomish County has said that that's going to be extremely difficult to reach. And so, well, I certainly share that perspective. And again, we've been sending letters to the state. I mean, I don't know how many letters I've signed on to with mayors and other leaders, and at this point, we're just not getting responses from them, which is disappointing.
Yeah.
Hey, Nate,
Go
this
ahead,
is Yola
Yola.
Barnett. I am actually a vice president of operations for Skagit Regional Health, and I can tell you that our case numbers are so low. Is there anything that's happening with the hospital association or that hospitals can do directly within the counties to help compel a message?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it could be beneficial to have hospital associations come together and put a letter to the state just to explain the perspective. One of the questions I asked our health officer, because we were seeing increased cases about a month ago, but the hospitalizations and deaths did not increase. And so I asked, what's your opinion on why that is? And of course, this isn't anything official, but what I was told from his perspective was that because we're seeing these new wave of cases coming in younger people, and younger people are less likely to be hospitalized or die as a result of COVID, it would take a couple more months for them to pass it on to the older generation, who are more susceptible to being hospitalized. But I mean, this was over a month or two ago, and so I think we're to the point where we haven't seen them increasing, and so I'm not sure why that is or what the potential solution is. If we go a couple more months where we've got the case counts but still no hospitalizations, or I shouldn't say no hospitalizations, but not a significant increase in hospitalizations or deaths, we might need to change our strategy, I think. But of course, that needs to be done at the state.
Nate, I have a question. What truly defines a case? Are they just counting the positives, or are they counting every individual that actually goes out and gets tested?
Positive.
I believe they keep.
Positive.
I believe they keep.
I know the answer.
Yeah, I think they keep counting both. But when we say case counts, it's the number of confirmed positive cases.
Okay. And so if one individual gets tested several different times, does that count as a multiple case for one person?
No.
No, and the cases are for every 2 weeks. And so like when I say, if we're at 60, that's 60 positive cases per 100,000 people within a 2-week period.
Thank you.
Yeah, the number of testing, it doesn't contribute to the number of cases. It might identify more cases, but.
I think Bryce is trying to get our attention, but I can't hear him.